Hello, friends, and welcome to the Alfie Brown Show. Hope the week's treated you well. I've just finished watching Strictly Come Dancing and having dinner with my family. And if there is any less relaxing thing to do in the world, well, I certainly haven't done it. I record these on Sunday evenings after watching the Strictly Come Dancing results show with my family, and I come upstairs at about 8:30 p.m. Just as everybody else is sort of going to bed or Jesse's reading or whatever, and I feel like it's about 11 o'clock at night, and honestly, I don't know really how to deal with it. I was with my friend today, and he said to me that when he has a very vivid memory of being a child, and when he was a child, he said to his mum and dad, "Mummy, Daddy, I'm friends with you," and his dad turned around to him and said, We're not your friends, we're your parents. It's a very different thing." And he still has a very vivid recollection of this quite formative setting of the relationship by his father. And if anything, I think I've done the opposite of that. I have created a degree of casuality with a 7-year-old relative of mine, who indeed is my son, that I just don't really believe that it's so hard. The problem is now to introduce the idea of discipline to him, to kind of to move it away from the idea that we're engaged in a game that is fun, or like a friendly altercation, or a bit of horseplay, or a bit of knockabout good time that involves banter, and that's in order to really impress upon him the idea that we're no longer engaged in friendly banter, but I am becoming, in a very lively and real way, devastatingly angry, is the introduction of volume. And volume isn't, and I didn't have to read Stephen Biddulph's Raising Boys to understand this, a bit of a shit thing to introduce into the equation, because it doesn't help anybody learn anything, apart from that loud noises are scary. So I'm not particularly keen on that aspect of my own parenting, but I do just feel so completely desperate sometimes. I feel like when there's the kind of dance of the three children, and they're sort of swirling about in their different formations, each one of them always perilously close to a kind of a fall and a resultant brain injury. So you've got the tension of going, I hope this irritating thing that I love doesn't murder itself by accident. So that makes you tense, and that makes you angry because they're endangering something that you love, which is them. And then you've got to deal with the noise that is shattering the solace of, this clean thought that you're having about just purely worrying about them is interrupted by these sorts of shards of shrill and piercing, screeching, laughing, just so much noise that to even process how afraid you are of them hurting themselves is difficult, because of the cacophony of shit that you're swirling in. And you sort of, I don't know how many of you have ever been wading in a river, but once I went wading in a river, and my wading trousers, they filled up with water. And then my laughing friend told me that there were adders in the river, and that my trousers were going to fill up with water, and adders were going to bite my legs. And as somebody who's extremely afraid of snakes, I started crying and trying to doggy paddle, but also whilst wearing wading trousers that were full of water. So trying to kind of drag half the lake that I'd Anyway, it was an overwhelming experience, and the sort of overwhelming experience, I suppose, that is reminds me of how it feels to parent 3 children simultaneously and to try and parent them well. And I become completely overcome constantly with the word life. I keep on saying it to myself over and over again, like, this is life, is it? This is are we living our lives right now as the madness dances madly about our minds? Is this life? Is this my life? Is this the one that I get to live? Sorry, I really wanted to try this podcast to start talking about something quickly and see what the most honest thing that you could say, see what it is that comes out. And actually, I wasn't really. I wasn't ready for that. The horror. I don't really even like Strictly Come Dancing very much. It's a really nice thing that we watch as a family, but because they're dancing about at bedtime, waking the baby up, and wiggling their butts and making all these, ghastly and lewd. They're lewd. Children are lewd. And made more lewd by the fact that they're children, so they're not quite fully aware of the extent to which they're being lewd, but their childishness does only to accentuate their lewdness when they are lewd. It's disgusting, but they're not to know. They're just wiggling their butts and like poking their fingers into it, going, ooh, hoo, hoo. I mean the cheeks, not the pushing the cheeks. But I just, I want them. I love them. I want to be a good dad. Don't we all? But Jesus Christ, I'd also like to be. I think when you start like repeating the word life to yourself in your own head, you get quite a highfalutin idea of what life should be. You get this idealized notion of life, or this life as you see it exist in films, where somebody's existence is condensed into 2.5 hours through, with some of the best color graders in existence, and they don't know whether to fuck, Rebecca, whatever her name is, or Scarlett Johansson, because they're too busy, dealing with their mad ex, Penelope Cruz, and painting wild paintings and drinking brilliant wine and saying, do you want to come on a plane with me? And they're saying, I absolutely do not. And then one of them's going, well, actually, I kind of would like to come on a plane with you. It's Vicky Cristina Barcelona, the film is Vicky Cristina Barcelona, isn't it? And that's sort of what, I mean, well, I don't know, I suppose we all have different ideas of what our life would be like if we drew it ourselves. And even if we did get to draw it ourselves, all of the people, like all of the characters in Vicky Cristina Barcelona, were they like real material human beings, would pick their nose. They just would all pick their nose, and they would all get annoyed by the wind. Maybe I do. When you're walking outside, and, oh God, it's so windy. Oh God, and they feel put upon by the wind, or they just hear. If they wanted to start a podcast, they'd have to do it at night because there was building work across the way. So they would end up sitting down late at night, wondering about what they should talk about whilst swilling wine. I'm very happy to be part of my wonderful family, and I'm very lucky. But trying to grasp the idea of long-term gain in the midst of, like, the way in which I always describe it, or have tried to describe it on stage before in a kind of quite bad bit of stand-up comedy, but I think the metaphor sort of works, is that no, I don't. It's not fun. It's not like nobody's going, "Ooh, let's have a baby so we can hang around with a baby." That's not why you want to have a baby. You want to have a baby so that something can grow into something that loves you back later. You're having a baby and you put up with the baby because it's an investment on what it becomes. You don't like going to the gym because like hurting yourself and being out of breath feels nice. What you like is feeling like dynamic and energized and strong and in control of yourself later. But that doesn't come. But would you still go to the gym if the gym took sort of 2.5 years to show any effects? You know, if there was a transformation program that you could go on, like for babies, where you could get your baby, like your newborn, your day-old baby, to, you know, like about 5 years old in 90 days. I wonder how many people would do it. Like, just get them there, quick as pos, and then, you know, that's a lot of shit. And you don't really remember up to that point anyway, so it's not like they're losing any of their life. You just go, well, it's going to be fine. You know, that's 90 days. We've packed in everything you need. Like the 90-day transformation. So you want to shed body fat and you want to get into great shape, that ripped look? You want that ripped look? Yes, I want that ripped look, but I don't want to have to be like you. So could I have a ripped look but not be you? Is there a YouTube channel that could teach me how to get that ripped look but not be somebody with a YouTube channel talking about getting a ripped look? Somebody who doesn't say ripped look, ideally. So I think the extremely simple point I'm trying to make in an extremely convoluted way is things that are worth something sort of take time, I guess. People talk about pleasure as something being necessarily short term, like you have a bun or you have a glass of red wine, because it's pleasurable, isn't it? You experience pleasure that way, but pleasure isn't confined to short-term experience. Or perhaps it is. Perhaps that's what pleasure is. But is that what pleasure means? I don't think it is what pleasure means. I think pleasure just means we think about pleasure as a sensual thing, as something that is a treat or an indulgence. But the pleasure of being loved and to love someone, a man or a woman, or one of your children that loves you back, and you know all the difficulty involved and the transcendental sense of self that you have from. I've never felt more intelligent than now I have children, and I've never read the news less. I couldn't give a fuck. I mean, obviously I could give a fuck, but I just don't understand how it would help. I don't understand, like, the intelligence that I have is something else. It's something almost intangible, something that I can't quite put my finger on. The intelligence that I feel, maybe intelligence is even the wrong word, but a sense of the perception of what it is to be, which is in itself an intelligence. It's just not intelligence it would be usually described. I have a new sense of intelligence, and my friends go, "Oh, do you know about the shipping policies and the backstop agreement in Northern Ireland that has led to all the complications? Do you know about that?" And I go, "No, I don't know about that. Do you know what it's like to die and still be alive? Do you know about that? Because I could tell you about that if you'd like." Strictly Come Dancing, Tom Fletcher from McFly left this week, and I always get quite a lot of shit from my friends for being a McFly fan. I liked the first couple of albums, and then Motion in the Ocean I thought had some really great pop songs on there, and people always say pop songs as if to go, so not real songs, but writing good pop music as pop music used to be and still sometimes can be is a difficult thing. It's not easy at all. The first Beatles albums were pop songs, and I think that there's some really good stuff on the first McFly albums. I'm not sure how I really enjoy it. I definitely do. There's something about it that I do like. It's joyful. Whether or not it's, good in the objective sense is, I don't know, for somebody else to decide. For whatever subjective reasons, and possibly it is, correctly observed, I think they're really good. I like it. Maybe it just chimes with something in my spirit. I don't know, but I don't think so. I think it's really good. And anyway, Tom Fletcher left Strictly Come Dancing, and it was so sad. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer left Man United, and it was so sad. And what struck me about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, the Man United Football Club manager, leaving Manchester United, and Tom Fletcher leaving Strictly Come Dancing, is how sort of similar their sort of speeches were at the end. Like, Tom Fletcher, when he left Strictly Come Dancing, was going, it's been a great journey, and I've just been so lucky to be here. Been so lucky. It's something I've always wanted to do, and it's just been an amazing journey. And obviously, I'm going like sooner than I would have liked, but really, it was just like great to be here and great to experience it. And I just want to thank you so much. I've made friends for life here. All of those cliches were repeated in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's farewell leaving video. I was just lucky to be here, and I can't do it, but such a pleasure. And obviously, it hasn't worked out the way I planned, but I've made friends here for life, and I'll keep supporting Man United. Keep supporting Man United. Just bizarrely kind of like. It was sort of moving and sort of sweet in a way, because I think it was so openly pathetic. It was so completely, the mask's off. I obviously was never a leader, was I? But now there's no need to pretend anymore. I can just be the sort of the weak dog that you always knew that I was, the pliable, smiling person who looks like a child who's put the old age function on through FaceApp. Thoroughly unconvincing person to look at any age. A Man United legend, it can't be taken away from him. But despite all of this, anyway, I think good luck to Tom Fletcher, good luck to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and all their future endeavours, which will be to be in McFly and the stands at Old Trafford, I assume, respectively. But who are we to judge? I said to somebody the other day, like, obviously, we can all criticise, but obviously, like, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's a better football manager than me. And then I stopped myself and went, I don't know. I wonder if he is actually. I wonder. Well, there's no way of knowing. Who does really know? So that's my kids. That's Strictly Come Dancing, and that's Ole Gunnar Solskjaer all out the way. I also think I'd like to take performance enhancing drugs. I think that's a decision that I've made for myself recently, that I'd like a shortcut somewhere, I think, and I really hope this doesn't come across as braggadly, but I've been doing stand-up for almost 16 years now, and I think I'm fairly good at it. And I think that anybody who does anything for 16 years and isn't very good at it should quit. I've been a stand-up for longer than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was a football manager, has been a football manager. I've been a stand-up comedian, I think possibly for longer than Tom Fletcher's been in McFly. All I would ask is that I could have some money. I know that I have a posh voice. Don't let it fool you. I don't have. I just, a lot of successful people that I know don't earn any money. I mean, I'm not particularly successful. I did just have especially good run at the Soho Theatre, but I'm not particularly, like permanently successful. I've got a little, right now, if we think about one's career as trying to start a fire in the wild, I'm seeing a little bit of smoke and perhaps a few sparks, but the whole thing hasn't caught to flame yet, as it can do for some people. So, maybe in the future, I'd like a little bit of money. I just think I deserve a little bit of money. A little bit more. And I don't really know where it's going to come from, because my ambitions aren't... I'm quite a frustrating comedian for those who work with me, because I'm quite monomaniacally possessed by the desire to do stand-up comedy and really nothing else. And I feel incredibly lucky when I look at 24-year-olds or 25-year-olds or 26-year-olds or even 27, 28, 29, 30-year-olds who don't know what they want to do. There's so many of them are kind of searching for something or switching, and I'm really lucky that I found what it was I wanted to do when I was 18 and did it, and now I'm 34 and we're 16 years hence, and I'd just like a little bit more money than I was earning when I worked at Topshop, Oxford Circus. I'm earning more money than that, but that you don't need to. Either way, the people that my pay hasn't risen in line with the change in my responsibilities, and I think everybody always thinks they're worth more, though. Everybody always thinks that they're worth, secretly, whether or not people voice insecurity a lot more readily than they. Well, maybe I've just never been troubled by imposter syndrome very much. I never really felt like an imposter. I've thought, quite a lot of the time, well, I'm better than you, aren't I? So I think if we're really being honest about it, and I hope that we are, if we divide people up into the kind of subcategories of the people who have imposter syndrome, I don't have that, and people who are kind of like the false humility, but because they think they're brilliant, and what they can't understand is, hang on, I'm impossibly good. What on earth has happened that means that oh God, this sounds awful, isn't it? I better tell people that, oh, no, I'm fine. No, I'm not really good. No. Oh, no, please. Oh, no, come on, stop it. No, stop it. No, stop it. I can't even hear about it. No, what was the bit again? Oh, yeah, no, that is a good bit. No, please stop. I'm recording this in a jumper, which on YouTube you'll be able to see. On audio, you won't be able to see it. I would really like to be able to call you all either listener or viewer, but I think given that I'll have to, that you're both, I'll have to call you something else. Friend or people. Person. Hello, person. I quite like friend. Either way, it's too hot, and I can't be bothered to edit the podcast, so I think I'm going to have to do the rest of it sweltering. Also, happy to announce that I'm drinking a glass of red wine. What is it? It's a Nopia 2017 Côte de Rhône, or is it Inopia? I think it's Inopia. It's Inopia, yeah, but they've turned the I, also, it is also an N. So Inopia expresses a handful of Rhône Valley varieties, planted on very poor stony clay where vines grow slowly and produce little fruit. Well, that's a fucking stupid idea, isn't it? What you want to do is get a vineyard somewhere where they produce a lot of fruit. Then you'll have a bit more wine to sell, won't you? So it's very nice Côte de Rhône that made by Inopia, but they're possibly not the best business minds. Anyway, if you own a company and would like to sponsor the podcast, preferably a natural wine company, I'd like it to be a natural wine company, because I'm going to start a natural wine segment of the podcast every single week, and possibly an accompanying web series called Big Naturals, where I taste and review all of my favourite natural wines, possibly some orange wines. Big Naturals with Alfie Brown coming soon. I was also asked to talk about social media, which I suppose, given the fact that I've just been talking about feeling like, I suppose what I was talking about there in a more roundabout way was trying to get a handle on one's own sense of personal worth, which is often a very difficult thing to do, because first of all, it's in your interest to think that you're brilliant because you're you, but also then confronted with that kind of messy like reality, you then go, oh, but it is in my interest to think, so I must be rubbish, maybe. I don't know how other people's brains work. I can only tell you or give you some insight into how mine works, but the level of artifice, or at least the sense of self-worth that most people feel, is more or less, I imagine, shot to bloody bits by social media. And I was asked to talk about social media. That was one of the topics that you sent in this week. I didn't ask for topics this week because I forgot, not because I didn't want them. So thank you very much to you for sending that in. I actually think your username on Instagram is a mess of numbers and letters, so I can't read it, but thank you. I think it is. They all create their own kind of perversions, don't they? And all encourage us to feel a certain way about, first of all, each other and ourselves, and also give quite a distorted view of reality. But as well as, people providing false ideas of their own existence, so as to give you a false impression of their own reality, to impress upon you the idea that they are successful, so that they might breed more success, which is quite a natural way to be. And also, this sort of thing has been happening, naturally, socially, in a face-to-face way for God knows how long. Paul Giamatti in The Cinderella Man, the last thing he sold in the Wall Street crash was his suit, because he wanted to keep on portraying the idea of success. But then when Russell Crowe goes to his house, they've had to sell all the furniture, and there's a guy sitting there in a beautiful suit, and it's brilliant acting, because Paul Giamatti is brilliant. I am not drinking Merlot, which actually made the Merlot sales go down a lot, and there's no real reason why he didn't really like Merlot, apart from that he just didn't like it very much. But then people watching it thought, oh, maybe I could be a bit of a wine snob as well, so they went off Merlot as well, because they got it into their brains that it was crap, I think. Again, I'm not yeah, okay. But I don't really think that, I don't think that that aspect of social media is perhaps the shittiest thing about it, is it? The worst thing about it is what it does to you when you post. You can eat time away on it if you don't really post, if you just have a receiving account, if you use it more to... whenever I'm on Twitter, so first of all, Twitter, I follow loads of people. Half of the people I follow because I should follow them, because they're my friends. Then I follow lots of football accounts. Those are the accounts that I want to follow. Then there's a few journalists, like Glenn O'Hara isn't a journalist, he's just a kind of smart guy who tweets a lot, but very, very interesting to follow him over COVID, because he just sort of, was a good bullshit sieve, and a good person to outsource one's own intelligence to if you were in a difficult spot about what was happening. Always explained what he meant very well, and always tweeted threads with sources, and was informative without being without arcane, is that the right word? Yeah. But most of the time, I cannot get to grips when the football's on and people are tweeting about something that isn't the football. Why bother? Why bother using something so frivolous and shit as Twitter to discuss anything that isn't also frivolous and shit? Just let me have my little bit of theatre. As a little side note, this is why I also can't feel any... I don't like people go, well, you really can't, but feel for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Yeah, you can. I but feel for him. I don't feel for him. I don't feel anything. I just think, oh no. Like, I don't feel anything for Tom Fletcher leaving Strictly Come Dancing. Oh, it was a dream, and he wanted to do Musicals Week, and the club is the club, and it has some DNA in it, and it's a great club, and just get a grip. You weren't good enough, you left, that was fine. That's what's most supposed to happen. How many people aren't good enough to do jobs every day and then leave them, and they leave them without having like millions and billions of pounds? But even aside from that, it's a cartoon. It's a big cartoon that we're all allowed to invest into however we want, and it is, again, to paraphrase Arrigo Sacchi, the most important of the unimportant things. So just tweet about it. It makes perfect sense to tweet about football, but not anything important. Stop tweeting about important things. Might have said this before, but Jonathan Franzen has a lovely quote about Twitter where he says, I don't trust any medium that doesn't allow for any meaningful use of the word although. Basically saying Twitter's too short to say something, and then although, which is a graceful and kind of brilliant thing to say, if a little bit hard to work out on the first listen. But there's a ferocity on Twitter that comes from having your true self hidden from everybody else. You can be free. It's like, essentially, you know how we all used to take the piss out of people who commented in like the Guardian comment section or the Daily Mail online comment section? Well, they basically made a comment section, they made a newspaper comment section, but instead of it just being like, at least on the Guardian comment section, when it still was toxic losers arguing with each other and bickering about nonsense, like, at least they all read the same paper. Whereas now everyone from every paper can all communicate with each other, and they've removed the shame of the newspaper comment section, and it's not good. The comedy sketches you get on there are quite good. I mean, it should just be video. Like, let's just tweet little videos of each other. That's what it should be. But then that's Reels or TikTok, isn't it? TikTok I don't understand. I don't really understand. It's too new. It's too new to know whether it's useful or good or what happens or how creative or, how much it destroys us or what it's being used for or how many teenagers are getting goaded into suicide because of it or how fucking corrosive it is to the human spirit. But I think with Twitter, like with Instagram, and Twitter and Instagram obviously the main players. I don't know, I haven't been on Facebook in God knows how long. But the problem is not with the receiving of information from others, apart from, of course, maybe some people who get swayed by some fake news journalism. That's a separate thing that I have no experience of. I don't know how that occurs. But one of the large problems, and I think you'll see this problem increase as perhaps the other problem of fake news decreases perhaps over the coming years, and a problem that isn't being really spoken about is the dopamine reward. Now, I do these podcasts and I get a lovely hit, a lovely dopamine thrill every time one of you comments underneath, every time one of you shares this to your Instagram story, every time one of you messages me or comes up to me at a gig and says that you listen to it and you tell me that it's great. Every time I feel wonderful. So thank you for doing that. And I suppose, I mean, I'm committing to, at the current point, 35 minutes, but eventually this will be an hour long-ish. I always aim for an hour-ish. And then it's over. And you've got me talking to no one. So what I really like about this is everything I hate about social media, which is the extraordinary scaffold of artifice and dog shit that we all construct around ourselves and one another, and then we justify it to each other by going, well, they're playing the game well, and then you start to believe your own bullshit about trying to communicate in a graceful way that's also honest, that also isn't cynical, that also conveys the message that you want to convey, which is, please will you come to my show on X date, 26th to 29th of January at the Soho Theatre, or on tour across the UK. Please find tickets at alfiebrown.comedian.com. But to try and be honest with a brain that isn't designed to communicate across this medium, and then to not be ready or made aware or have had any sort of warning about what this does to your dopamine reward kind of center system. I don't know the correct terms for it, but I do know that when you post something and it gets likes, you get a dopamine hit, which means that kind of algorithmically you're rewarded to create something that gets a lot of likes. Like, I remember I tweeted once. Once upon a time, I did a tweet, and the tweet was, I don't know if you remember, but Terry Gillingham from Monty Python, he said in an interview about how hard it is to be a straight white male and still get roles in things. He said, I just tell everybody I'm a black lesbian now. And what I did was one of these sort of, one of the typeface tweets that you got the building blocks for your tweet, and you just paste your joke into the building blocks of it. It's shit, really, isn't it? But fine, it is what it is. And it was like a casting director. I think Terry Gillingham would be good for this part. Assistant casting director, have you considered perhaps Wanda Sykes? She'd be better, a black lesbian. Because it's absurd, isn't it? The idea that Terry Gillingham would be good for a role that then they decide against and give to Wanda Sykes. I mean, I think it'd be quite good. Quite like Wanda Sykes, and I think probably Terry Gillingham's seen better days. I hope his name is Terry Gillingham. I've said Terry Gillingham so many times I'm starting to worry that that's not actually his name, but you all know the bloke I'm talking about. So if there's another Terry Gillingham who kind of works with BBC Breakfast or something and I've just got his name stuck in my head, apologies to you if you're a listener or viewer, a friend, a friend, but I got a wrong name. Anyway, that tweet got so many likes and so much applause and approbation. Same as when I slagged off Boris Johnson. Lots of action. And then you create a system whereby you go, oh, okay, I know what opinion the people around me like, because, and I feel very encouraged to have that, because my dopamine, reward center is telling me that I've just had the right opinion, because lots of people like me now and endorse what I'm saying, and therefore I'm going to say more of that. And that's how we get stuck in these ruts of being. And that's also something I allude to in the show, if you have any interest in seeing it, is when you say I'm depressed on Instagram, you get a kind of big dopamine hit off of being confessing depression. And then you go, God, I'm so depressed. And then you go and you say you're depressed on Instagram, and then everybody goes, oh, brilliant, well done for being depressed and saying it, that's brave. And then you go, ooh, wow, that felt brilliant. Oh, and then you really lean into the depression because you love the dopamine. And so it becomes an unhealthy, like codependent relationship between your acknowledgement of your own depression. So your depression becomes a bigger part of your identity because it's necessary for keeping you happy. Isn't that weird? And I think a lot of that, in the same way that it's, gives you a big dopamine hit. Not that like sex offenders shouldn't be outed, but if you out one, then you go, oh, fuck, ooh, you get the dopamine. There's lots of things I want to say now where I kind of qualify what I just said, but you understand what I just said. Life is difficult and complicated, and all these sex offenders deserve absolutely nothing from anybody, obviously. But life is complex and horrible and a mess. And I think the most worrying thing about social media is not necessarily the fake news stuff that gets a lot of press these days, but the role it plays in the building of our perception of ourselves and the way in which we form ideas about us as people and our own opinions based on a quite kind of a visible metric of approval. At least when it's kind of social approval, that still at least takes a little bit of social wherewithal. At least you need to at that point go, oh, I know, I read in you that you like what I'm wearing, what I'm saying. And at the same time, these you voice an opinion. People like the sound of their own voices too much to ever just go, I think I don't feel like the Formula One drivers should be racing in Qatar. I feel like the rainbow helmet thing. It's either do race there or don't race there. But this making a stand whilst being in the country and talking about equality whilst at the same time racing there is the apotheosis of woke capitalism. And then the person you're talking to goes, oh, like. Well, that's not a conversation. What they'll do, because they like the sound of their own voice, and a lot of the time what they'll want to do when you have an opinion to someone face-to-face in a kind of social setting, is they'll want to say your own opinion back to you in different words to make you think it was their opinion. That's a really clever social trick, you'll find. I probably do it, I think, in my worst moments. Anyway, I hope that clears up your query about social media. The other request I got to talk about this week was free will, and I'm very keen to speak about free will. But what I'd really like to do, I think, is start a separate podcast. So at some point this show will go bi-weekly, and then the second show will go behind a paywall, and it will either be this show that goes behind the paywall or the one that has one theme, such as free will, or basically like a kind of the in our time with Melvin Bragg, but it's only me and I'm not bright as them. I'm bright, but I'm not like Melvin Bragg, and I don't have a team of Galen Strawson and bunch of cool guys and girls talking me through the thing. Oi. Did I talk about wanting to go on performance-enhancing drugs? think I might have got sidetracked when I wanted to talk about going on performance-enhancing drugs. Because I want one thing in my... I just want a shortcut. Yeah, I think I did talk about that. This coming week, I've decided to take a little bit of time off gigs. I just wanted a little bit of time. I want to learn how to edit on Premiere Pro. That's one of my big goals. I'd like to learn After Effects, but I feel like that might be biting off more than I can chew. I like the idea of doing video essays. I really love watching video essays. To follow up on, the whole thing about social media is, YouTube is so completely great. Obviously it's awful as well, but it's so incredibly vast. It's like the first social media network that I think we've mastered. That obviously is still a problem, but newspapers are a problem, but it's found what it is and we're all cool with it. And I love it. I can learn about the sewer system in London, or planets, or the football, or like hipster football, or I can watch myself. You can watch me, my whole hour-long special, Alfie Brown Imagination. Go watch it, like it. Share it, help the algorithm, help this thing's algorithm, help all the help. That's what Bob Geldof should have been singing about. Help all the algorithms survive. Oh, like and share, and click the bell. And then Sting sings, oh, like the things that help the algorithms. The poor little algorithms need your help. You can like Algorithm Aid. I didn't feel like I could really go for it because everybody's asleep downstairs, but you're with me. We could have a whole social media album. Gram, take a gram, regram a gram, we'll regram grams, regram some grams, we'll regram grams. We will regram grams, gram, we will regram grams, regram. We will regram grams, we'll regram grams, we will regram grams. The regramming of Instagrams was a short-lived phenomena. You'd have to get the Regram app, and then you could regram somebody if you particularly liked their gram. But now you need to do Reels, and this is the best way to grow on Instagram, as I've had so many charismatic teenagers tell me on YouTube. But stand-up isn't even that old. It's not like we've even really got to grips with, where we can take stand-up as a form. So all of these ways of communicating, or ways in which we use media, like TikTok, and there was a time when YouTube was just, Charlie bit my finger in the Parenthood people, but now look at it. So yeah, this show, where I will go on flights of fancy about my life, and then who knows what. I'm quite content with the idea that eventually I'd like to start doing these during the day. I feel like doing them at night gives them a certain sort of energy. I don't know whether you feel like this is necessarily quite low key or relaxed. Possibly relaxing, but I certainly feel like doing them in the daytime would give them a different energy, give me a different energy. Of course, the daytime edition. Maybe that's what the second show can be, the daytime edition. And it's fucking weird creating a Patreon. First of all, you've got to kind of get to grips with the idea that you feel like you're begging. Patreons feel like begging, so you've got to be selling something. So the one podcast is free, second podcast you pay for, and at least that way it feels like you're selling something of value. You're not just going, please can I have some money because life is so difficult and you have some and I don't and I'd like some, please. But then the other thing with a podcast, and this is a square I find very hard to circle, if that's the correct expression, is the idea of creating a community. And I'm very into the idea of not creating a community, because that sounds a little bit like one might have a Christ complex, but the idea of the podcast or something having its own sense of community. And therefore, I haven't quite actually worked out in my head whether I think there is a sort of like a lurking evil to these sorts of things, but I don't think there is. I think in our ever-growing, more isolated age, where community is more experienced as a digital phenomena, the idea of communities that thrive together through a mutual interest might be a really positive thing. And actually, whilst the internet is a shit dickhead in a lot of ways, one of the ways in which it might be brilliant is it might be building communities and helping people feel less isolated in a world, where there's so. Are you ready for a good take? There's so many of us, isn't there? Or aren't there? So fucking many of us. So it's very hard to feel like, oh, I'm important, or I'm part of something, or what's the Fleet Foxes lyric? I want to be in a turning cog in something greater than me, or whatever it is. Can't remember. But I know that feeling. I think that's why I probably support Liverpool Football Club. And I've loved other things as well. I love a podcast called the Anfield Rap, which is associated with Liverpool, but it's not really about them being Liverpool fans. It's about the fact that I've listened to their voice so many times. I feel like they're my friends. I know them intimately. And so and also, and I've never had this, but if I ever spoke to a really big fan of the Anfield Rap, I would be able to have a conversation with them for hours, like I would be able to anybody who had like a football fan or a father or a comedian. You can speak to any comedian for fucking hours about anything, because they have such a shared interest. It's like it just is important. It's actually a few of the famous people I've met, that I've been friends with, have gravitated more and more towards other famous people, because they kind of go, well, God, Jesus Christ, don't you? So, oh God, Jake Gyllenhaal, nice to see you. Yeah, it is a nightmare, isn't it, being famous like this? Nobody else understands, but you do, don't you, Jake Gyllenhaal? Jake Gyllenhaal? Jake Gyllenhaal! So, poor old Jake Gyllenhaal. I hope he's doing well. Anyway, the whole thing, and the way in which I feel weird about it, is when people try and engineer the idea of community, and it has to be organic. My friends at the Have a Word podcast, seem to have done it terrifyingly organically, and it seems to have. They have hit upon something so rich and deeply important for everybody, not only involved in the actual podcast, but who listens to it. It's really sweet, and obviously it's a really funny podcast as well, but a deeply inspirational story with what they've done in the sense of community that they've engendered within what they're doing. So I am not keen to kind of create that. I don't know if I even could, or I don't know, how one really does that. But I certainly want to. Anyway, I'm going to create a second podcast and create a Patreon for it and sell the second podcast on Patreon, as it were. And you've got to come up with funny names for the tiers. So I've decided. I don't know what I've decided. I don't know. I just don't know anymore. Oh, and I'll tell you something else, and I'm not sure how interested you're going to be in this, because this is me walking amongst the very lowest of the dead. But I bought Football Manager. I haven't told Jessie yet, so don't tell her. But I bought Football Manager, and I have been playing it. when I come up here and I've finished doing some work or I edit this, I'll play a little bit of Football Manager. And Football Manager, for those of you that don't know, it's a football management simulation whereby you manage a football team, you set the training schedule, you buy the players, you set up some tactics, probably a home tactic and away like, you know, playing a crap team tactic, playing a great team tactic, you know, blocking off a game, like, you know, trying to kill a game tactic, sterile domination, that's what my one's called. And it's a real undertaking, and spiritually and time-wise. But I do feel like, I think it was after I did well at the Soho Theatre, and I didn't really know if I was going to. I felt so pleased with myself at the end of it that I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll ruin my life. As a reward, as a treat for me for doing well at the Soho Theatre, I will pay £30. I just ruin my life. And the casuality with which you make the decision to purchase a game which has had books about its life-ruining properties written, which has been cited in divorce courts. This game is a, you know, talk about doing performance-enhancing drugs and what that would do. That's what I should do. I should go on a little holiday, like for maybe 60 days, where I take steroids and then I like work out every day, like twice a day, and then I play Football Manager and just get it all out of my system. And then I maybe have a set and then maybe a nice dinner and a sex worker. And then that'll be every day. I'll just do a workout and with some steroids, whatever. Football Manager for 2 or 3 hours. Maybe then read a book afterwards. But I think I'll probably carry on playing Football Manager. Then a nice dinner and you can, after you've done exercise all day, you can eat like quite well. You can eat what you want, really. It's the great thing about exercising. And then have a very pleasant evening. Maybe I could have a meal with the sex worker and we could have a chat before we had sex. That would be nice. Just as a little kind of like, just to set me up for the rest of my life. Just a little, well done you for, you know, what makes me think I deserve this treat, I'm not sure, but just to set me on my way. Anyway, as always, I don't think I really meant any of that, so don't worry about it. If you'd like to request or suggest any topics for conversation, then I'd be keen to hear them. Thank you so much for listening, watching. You are my gods. You are my children. You are my people. You are not mine. You are your own. And I hope life is going really, really well for you, obviously. Let's hope we get an email back from the Natural Wine Company so that we can crack on with our Big Naturals web series. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already subscribed, and like the video and push it up the algorithm. Help the algorithm survive. I've not quite worked on this melody yet. And I think I'm singing better than Bob Geldof can. So there's many problems with this pastiche as we stand. But that doesn't mean that it shouldn't continue. People, friends, Romans, you all know this podcast. I remember the first time you put it on. So thanks very much for listening. I really appreciate it. Sorry for rambling at the end. Good luck to all of you in all of your future endeavours. This is the Alfie Brown Show. Tell somebody that you like, or else.